Shalom.
It is great to be able to celebrate so many smachot, happy occasions, and to celebrate with the Marin Perler family on this very special Shabbat. Um, I want to begin by just kind of traveling around the country. And if you travel around parts of, especially the South and parts of the Bible Belt, you might find cool recreations of our Torah, like the Noah's Ark encounter in Kentucky, spanning some 510 feet. Now, in this area of the country, in the Bible Belt, most of the Bible, most of it's presented for a young viewing audience. And you could even see that it has pretty much a G rating. But as it turns out, the Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible, is not rated G. It's not even PG. As we saw in this morning's Haftarah, where an attractive young woman, Avishag, is brought in to warm the elderly King David. Forget the rating. This is just not appropriate. But this is just the tip of the iceberg, as the text continues with intrigue. Competing groups claim that they will succeed King David. His son Adoniah goes around boasting, Ani amloch, Ani amloch, I will be the king, I will be the king. And even though he's not supposed to do any of that, his father does not scold him for it, nor when he takes chariots and horses and 50 outrunners to run next to his carriage. Apparently, the text says that he was very handsome and that he had a very large Twitter following. Oh, wait, my bad. Text does not say that. Sorry, my mistake. But the intrigue gets even messier. Bathsheba, who wants her son Solomon to become the next king, confers with Nathan the prophet, who tells her that she better run quick and convince David before it's too late to save the life of her son. Apparently, back then, if you lost an election, or selection, the losers were often killed. So they were not around anymore to cause any more trouble. Bathsheba reminds her elderly husband that he had promised her that it was going to be her son, Solomon, who was going to inherit the throne. And she then tells him what her other son, Adoniah, has done. And she warns him. She tells him the eyes of the world are on him. Nathan the prophet, arrives seemingly by coincidence, but of course they planned it. And he reminds King David of his promise. Nathan tells him of all the people who are already going around shouting, Yechi HaMelech Adoniyahu, long live King Adoniyahu. Now the echoes to this moment are really just a little bit too eerie. But as opposed to Fox News or most of the Republican senators who seem unable to acknowledge the simple truth that Joe Biden won the election, King David is able to realize the truth and what he has to do. He takes an oath. As God, who has rescued me from every trouble, lives, the oath that I swore to you, Bathsheba, by Adonai, God of Israel, that your son Solomon shall succeed me as king, and that he should sit upon the throne in my stead. I will fulfill this oath this very day. Now, again, while sometimes our Torah reading or the Haftarah has some subtle connections to things going on in our lives or current events or things we're experiencing, or sometimes Rabbi Kling Perkins and I have to really work to find a connection. Sometimes we do not have to do a thing. This would be a case of the latter. The Haftarah is exactly the messiness of this moment. And it really is a mess. This political transition is like nothing we have ever seen. Thanks to the infantile and spiteful behavior of the current inhabitant of the White House and his followers, they are just like Adoniah and his followers. People, as it turns out, do not change that much, even after 3,000 years. In case you've been in hibernation for the last 12 days, we've just had the most secure election in our country's history, according to independent official government agencies. Second, President-elect Biden won the Electoral College by plenty. He has 306 Electoral College votes, and won the popular vote by over 5.2 million, garnering the most votes in United States history. Third, people are being told misinformation right now at Stop the Steal rallies this weekend all across the country. Fourth, right-wing talk show hosts are discussing barely existing election fraud nonstop. I'll give you an example. Rush Limbaugh. He has about 15 million listeners a week. He mentioned election fraud 204 times last week. Fifth, this is not just damaging this moment, but it's damaging our people's long-term faith in our democracy. And sixth, we have people encouraging violence, like former White House chief strategist Stephen Bannon, who suggested that Dr. Anthony Fauci and FBI Director Christopher Wray should be beheaded. I'm beginning to think that House of Cards or Game of Thrones might be a nice, gentle program to watch to calm us down from all the news. Against this most strange and maybe even surreal and challenging backdrop, I want to shift gears and hold up the memory of a Torah giant that we lost this last week, last Shabbat. This is from the forward, which actually has Saib Erekat right over here, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs in the middle, and Alex Trebek. I'm going to focus on the middle. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, Zichrono Livracha, may his memory be blessed and may it continue to teach us. Rabbi Sachs served as the chief rabbi of the entire United Kingdom from 1991 to 2013, and the spiritual leader of London's largest Orthodox synagogue. A prolific author, Sachs was able to traverse worlds and transmit classical Torah texts to any audience. He was comfortable moving from Maimonides to Martin Luther King Jr. His books inspired people around the globe, and his classic, The Dignity of Difference, gave Jews the permission to be proud of our Jewishness while not degrading the value of any other human being. Many of you over the years would send me emails with links to his Divrei Torah, and they have inspired me in my teaching over my career. My colleague and friend, Jeremy Burton, the head of the JCRC of Greater Boston, pointed me to a wonderful teaching of Rabbi Sachs that serves as the perfect counterpoint to the Haftarah. Now, before I share that, let me just say that the transition in the Torah reading is much smoother than the messiness of the Haftarah. While there's a little bit of bartering, as Gabe pointed out, when Abraham must buy a burial plot for Sarah, things mostly go smoothly. A wife is found for Isaac, and at the end of the parasha, Abraham actually remarries, and then he dies old and content. There is no fight for control of his estate. everything seems to have been settled smoothly. In fact, his sons, Isaac and Ishmael, who had issues getting along in last week's parasha, seem to have been reunited, and they bury their father together at the same Ma'arat HaMachpelah, the same cave of Machpelah in Hebron, where Abraham had buried his wife at the opening of the parasha. In his book, Covenant and Conversation, Rabbi Sachs points to Avram's relationship with Hagar, the mother of his son Ishmael. If you remember what happens, Avram sends away Hagar. And so there's kind of a cutoff there. But Rabbi Sachs emphasizes how both Isaac and Ishmael are present at their father's funeral. Since there has been a family split, and now they're back together, Rabbi Sachs sees this moment as somewhat surprising. What's the reason for the reunification? And he cites a wonderful 8th century midrash, Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, which explains that father and son had been reconciled through Ishmael's second wife, a woman named Fatima, who herself embodied Abraham's approach to welcoming guests by standing at the entrance to the tent, just as Abraham did last week. Sachs notes this and says that given the timing of the writing of this midrash, right, in the 8th century, which is when Islam is spreading rapidly, the name Fatima is no coincidence. It is also the name of Muhammad's daughter in the Quran. Sachs writes, quote, "It is highly significant, making an explicit and positive reference to Islam. Thus, the hidden story of this week's reading has immense consequences for our time in its tale of reconciliation between Judaism and Islam. There can be friendship and mutual respect," Sachs writes. Abraham loved both of his sons and was laid to rest by both. Sachs concludes, there is hope for the future in this story of the past. Let this Torah be the light and the hope to guide us at this time. Try to ignore the immaturity of people who seem unable to lead, and focus on the Torah of reconciliation, as Rabbi Sachs teaches us. May those teachings sustain and strengthen us as we transition to the future. Shabbat Shalom.